Now, with inflation officially at 8.6% and climbing, you might be looking for help to achieve financial safety. Call them and Noble Gold's experts will share their knowledge of gold IRAs. And if you're quick, they're giving away an incredible 1/10 ounce American Eagle Gold Proof coin with every qualifying IRA or 401k rollover. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call the team now at 877-646-5347 to find out more or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking, for subscribing, for sharing, and for being a part of this family. Now, today we want to talk a little bit about the situation in this country, in the United States, especially with regards to the current government. It is so abundantly strange what is happening. My personal experience speaks to that as well. But let's start with the beginning of what seems to be the strangest, most weirdest residency we have ever seen in history. And let me say one thing right before. I cannot get myself to call Biden the P word. Now, rumor has it, and recent revelations might have confirmed that his son is calling him a whole different P word, but I just can't get myself to call him the P word. So I will continue to say Resident Biden. There's a reason why I'm saying this. But let's begin with what happened 1.5 years ago, right? We had an election in this country, and then 2.5 months later, as it is customary, there was an inauguration. But when you actually go and look into this inauguration, when you actually connect the dots and when you put away the blinders, you will see a lot of very strange things that were happening around that time. Of course, a lot of things were rumored, but let's stick to the things we can at least somehow confirm before we go into a very, very interesting theory about what's really going on. So the first thing here is, and I'll give you the reason why we're even going into this. The first thing here is to look at how the apparent transition of power really happened. The new President Biden, actually, flying around in a plane that presidents usually do not fly around in. It was a more regular Boeing or more regular plane. I don't know if it's a Boeing, but more regular plane as opposed to the one plane that is usually used as Air Force One that we all know of. Well, a lot of other very weird things happened with the nuclear football not being transferred the way it's. So many discrepancies. Of course, then we have President Biden frequently appearing on a fake White House set, frequently appearing in front of fake windows, showing simply green screen or fake stuff, right? So we have all of that. You should go look into this. It's really interesting. Also, we have White House press conferences where all of a sudden there's a plane overhead. Now, as you know, or at least might think there are no planes around the White House because it is a strict no-fly zone. So there are no planes just flying above the White House. Also, you have frequently President Biden misspeaking, talking out of context, calling other people the actual president.
There's been a little change in the arrangement of who's on the stage because of the First Lady's husband contracting COVID. But look at this room and what you see. Pardon? That's right. She's fine. It's me. That's not together. The second lady, the first gentleman.
And referring to his quote-unquote vice resident as the actual first lady, first husband. I mean, just very, very weird stuff going on. But what is really more important, because that's kind of the optics part of it, is that when you dive deeper into decision-making processes and when you dive deeper into how a country is actually run, then it becomes very obvious that this current administration doesn't really have access to the buttons that have tremendous power like previous administrations used to have. Because when there's a real transfer of power, all the quote-unquote button and switches are active and wired, which means that every new president is actually equipped with all the powers and rights of the previous one, right? So this is what they call the transfer of power. Everything a president can do, he's now equipped to do. With this President Biden dude, it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems that his capabilities in actually doing anything significant are extremely minuscule, and his access to certain information and operations information seems to be too. Now, a lot of this stuff is actually portrayed very well in a very, very interesting theory. We're going to link to that theory in a video description. I encourage you to read it. It's called the devolution theory. And without going too deep into what it means, it actually lays out in a very, very precise and well-researched manner that what we're experiencing is a show, is truly a movie, is something that is happening on the surface when something really different is happening in the background. Now, we've heard this phrase before, and it most certainly appears to be that way, but why is that important? Why we're discussing it here on the Inspired channel? Because it is one more highly significant sign that you, capital U, need to take full responsibility for your life and really make sure that you become self-sufficient. Because what that shows us is that in the current state, we have a completely fragile system that doesn't seem to operate so it could actually fulfill its duties to the people. Where there's no faith in this government. It's absolutely astonishing that the President Biden has an approval rating that's 30% right now. And that's official numbers from polls, which we know are always doctored. So the approval rating is probably actually much lower. If we were to go out in the streets and actually ask real people, real questions, I believe this would go way lower. And to compare it to something, when President Nixon resigned after the Watergate and scandal and everything else that unfolded, he was at 24. So Biden is really, really scratching that mark, or probably will set a new record, which this administration is, without doubt, the worst administration ever in terms of everything. But there are also other factors that play into this. There's also a vice president, Kamala Harris, that cannot seem to get a straight sentence together when she's not on teleprompter, and oftentimes disappears. Her events have to be rescheduled or canceled or whatnot because nobody shows up. And then interestingly enough, if we switch back to President Biden, when he comes riding down the road on his bike and falls over, weirdly enough, there's a crowd of people very, very close to him. This is highly unusual to be possible because usually the people who are really in the center of power are very much shielded from these situations because they can be very dangerous, uncontrollable. Yet we do seem to see this very often, that he appears in situations where he would be highly vulnerable. But then again, who would want? I mean, come on, let's not even go there. But let me tell you a little bit about my personal experience. When I went to DC last summer, so it was summer season, tourist season, high noon, all that stuff. On a Tuesday morning, at 9:30 a.m. when it should be really busy. I'd been to DC before, it's different. I was the first person at every red light in smack downtown DC. There was no traffic jams. There was very little tourism. Most of the federal buildings that I saw were closed down. Nothing was going on. No traffic in and out. You could get very close to the White House, which was actually surrounded by weird containers. There was not a whole lot going on there either. Security seemed to be very low compared to previous years. The traffic in town, as I said, was down, which is very weird because for those of you who know DC, usually you can hear sirens all the time because some diplomat or some ambassador or some other important politician is driving around town all the time, and they have their security detail, and then they have DC, the DC Metro Police that's in front or in the back of the caravan, riding or driving through town with the sirens on, and that's happening all the time. Usually it's hustling and bustling. And when I was there a year ago during summer season, nothing really was going on. It was very weird, very odd, and just inexplicable. So my intuition tells me that we are in an unprecedented state, that power currently, the way we interpret it as political power, government power, and in terms of who's running the country, is not where it usually is. The center of power is somewhere else, and it is with someone or another group. Now, I do believe this will not be revealed to us anytime very soon. I might be wrong on that, but it's currently even a question what the legal status of the republic really is, what it really is. Is it a corporation? Is it an actual government? Is it a common? I mean, there are so many rabbit holes to go down, but it's not even the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you one more field which people kind of used to rely on one way or another. They used to rely on their government to be there, even though it might have been corrupt, even though it might have been, overstepping it, but at least it felt like it was there to fulfill the most common and the most basic duties. And this seems to be falling apart too. So I encourage you really to step into self-reliance and discover what that means in your life. Discover what it means to take full responsibility for everything, because I do believe what we can learn from this as beings who want to be free and sovereign is, what is self-governance? How can we move out of this system and become fully sovereign, self-governing beings? We don't have to be in this system until the very bitter end. And I'm not even talking about leaving everything behind. What I'm talking is becoming a sovereign being where you are and truly embodying what it means to be. As I always say, what are the basic needs, and can you take care of those basic needs? Your food, your water, your shelter, power, clothing. Can you take care of those needs if the government systems completely fall apart, which they seem to be falling apart every day more and more and more? And also in your families and in your communities, do you have a structure that actually allows for common decisions to be made? Is there maybe a council of elders in your community? Is there something like every little group, every family, there's always leadership. So we need to establish that again, not rulership, but leadership. Usually wiser, elder, people with more experience, wisdom, and perspective are very good leaders, and so they can lead a community with a wonderful heart and with a beautiful mind and a good connection, and so they can suggest things and help people on their path. I believe it's very important that we start doing that. I also believe that always, especially in a country with the size of the United States here, there will have to be a common leadership that somehow, combines what states want and what counties want and what cities and towns want, and have a little bit of a central figure in this, not overbearing, but for common interests. There will always have to be a sort of leadership in that position. I do believe the nature of this leadership will change. We're already seeing it. And interestingly enough, another point that I haven't even touched on yet is the prophecies by interesting people that have prophesied about this time, that have spoken about the last president or two presidents at one time, that have spoken about this time of great upheaval, chaos, transformation, but also very positive shifts. So we are in this. What I can say is, every day more and more people realize they cannot rely on these structures anymore. These structures are falling apart. They are not something you can lean on any longer. So I encourage you to lean on yourself and create community. Very soon we will have beautiful friends of ours who are already creating these groups everywhere, who are creating communities of like-minded people to exchange information, to have synergy, to bring together not just knowledge, but also the common goods that people need, and to be among, also sort of leadership. So these groups are coming up. People always ask us, how do you do that? How do you create communities? Yes, we'll have people on that are already doing it, showing you and telling you how they do it, so you might get inspired to do the same. All right, Inspired Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in. I encourage you, read the Devolution series. It's quite an extensive read about a very, very interesting theory about what's actually going on in this country. Again, this is a theory, and I encourage you to explore different perspectives. It always broadens the horizon, but trust your own intuition, and most importantly, bring back the power over your most basic needs to you and your community. All right, tribe, thank you again. Be abundantly blessed, and we'll be with you again very, very soon.